Hi guys, Mark from Mind Frontiers. Today I'm going to do a little geeky talk about depression, and I'm going to use Lord of the Rings. So I've been looking at some quotes, and we'll go through the quotes and how this can help with depression. So bear with me while I look at the quotes. So the first quote is, all we have to do is to decide what to do with the time that is given to us, Gandalf the Grey. Now many people, when they're depressed, they feel like they have no choice, so they feel like they can't do anything. They feel like the world is against them. Well, in that particular part of the story of Lord of the Rings, that everything was against Frodo and Sam, and he didn't know where to go, and he felt down, and he was also grieving at the loss of Gandalf. But the memory came back, and it came back as a quote which basically says, look, yes, you're going through a rough time at this minute in time, but it doesn't have to end this way. We can change it. We can look at a new perspective. We can just look at it and go, okay, what is our choice at this minute in time? What are the facts that we've got? What can I do differently? Therefore, it comes down to a choice of empowerment and reflection. So therefore, we can look at the things that we're doing. And is this working for me? Or what do I need to do? What is in my control right now? And when you start looking at these sort of things, it actually starts changing our perspective. If we start looking for an alternative, start looking for a different solution, we will have a different result. And then there's another little quote by Thorin Oakenshield in The Hobbit. If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. It's kind of true, guys. We are programmed by society to be materialistic, to have things in the now. We want it now. And when we don't get it, we get upset and we get rejected and we feel upset. And that can lead to depression and not knowing what we're going to do. But when we start looking at things like music and giving love and cheer and empathy to other people, and even valuing food. Most people nowadays, if they eat food and they're depressed, they'll binge eat rather than actually savouring and being mindful of the food that they eat. It's just get it down your neck. Now let's take a step back and give some love, empathy and compassion to other people. And when we start doing that, we'll start boosting our own self-esteem. Because this is what it's all about, is our own self-esteem, it's our own self-worth. And what is your self-worth? Do you believe in yourself, or are you struggling? So learn to start loving yourself as well as other people. And this is massive in helping with depression and all sorts of emotions when you start to love yourself. And one of my favourite quotes is, in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow, and even darkness must pass. And this was Samwise Gamgee. And it's so true. What we dwell upon grows. So when we're thinking we're depressed, we get more depressed. We hang around with depressed people and we feel worse. But emotions come and they go. So we've got to take a step back and go, let this emotion go. Acknowledge it. Because it's there to teach you, it's there to help you learn. So the whole quote was, it's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered, full of darkness and danger they were. Sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was? When there's so much bad that had happened. But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. And it must pass. Now we all are on a journey. We've all got our own darkness. We've all got our own light. We all face our own dangers. And these are often from our own thoughts. But we're on this journey. We've got to enjoy the journey, and then the destination is going to be even sweeter. So learn to start reflecting and love yourself. Now this might not be easy, but all great stories are often full of darkness. They're often difficult at times. And you've got a great story with you. And tomorrow, when you're having a bad day, is a new chapter. So you can start writing your own story. Write your own chapters. Because when we start doing that, we are changing what we're doing. And then we're not focusing on not all those who wander are lost. Who Tolkien wrote that. Now we may feel lost, and we may feel that we're wandering. But when we give ourselves a sense of purpose, when we start looking at new perspectives, we're no longer lost. We're finding ourselves. And let's start finding ourselves. Let's start finding our true selves and loving ourselves and be happy with who we are and enjoying our journey, so that we can get to the destination of our journey, and the journey's end will be so amazing. And this comes back going by letting these things, emotions, go. It can be done in many different ways. It can be done with meditation, it can be done with anxiety, it can be done with just knowing yourself and doing things like gratitude lists and what you can accomplish. It can even be done by starting to be acknowledging where you're sitting and where you're standing and how you're talking to yourself, and just changing that process so that actually we get a different result. Because if what you do is not working, then you must change what you're doing. But you've got to be aware of what you're doing so that you can change it. And even the slightest little change, the slightest little difference will give you a different result. So this feeds into depression and anxiety, this quote. It's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out your door. You step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. Bilbo Baggins. And this is again about, if we don't put ourselves out there, we'll just stay in and not do anything. But if we do put ourselves out there, how are we going to do it? What are we going to do? What plans and strategies are we going to have? Because we're going to be stepping out of our comfort zone. But sometimes, in order to get out of the rut and the emotion that we're in, we need to be controlled. We need to control our own emotions, and we need to strategize. Otherwise we can be overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed, this can lead to anxiety and more depression. So let's go, okay, what is in my control right now? What can I do differently? Sometimes we have to push our boundaries so that we can bring it back and have a different result. We've all got love and darkness inside us. Now, Haldir's quote, "The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there are many dark places, but still there is much that is fair. And though in all the lands love is now mingled with grief, it grows perhaps the greater." Now, what is he saying there? He's saying start looking for the positives. So many people, when they go out and they're depressed, they don't see the positives that are out there. They don't start focusing on the small things, like the beautiful flower, the pretty butterfly, the lovely formations of the clouds in the sky, the sun in the air, the warmth as it hits your body, the snow as it looks pretty when it's on the ground. All they do is tend to focus on the negative. So, it's raining. It's always bloody raining. And then they adopt the posture and the attitude of, I'm upset now because I'm going to get all wet and I'm going to get all damp. Let's look at the positives. The rain, it will feed the flowers. It can wash away our aches and pains if we know how. So if we allow the water just to run over down our hair, and you can imagine our thoughts and feelings just running away with it. We start looking at the positives, we start having a new mindset, rather than focusing on the negative. And then we have this quote from Irwin, "But no living man am I, you look upon a woman." Now in that society, the women weren't allowed to carry the swords. But she was strong, she was independent, she knew her own mind, she knew her own body. And this is what you guys have to do when you are depressed. You need to start looking at yourselves and knowing what you are, because you are not that emotion that you have. The emotion is just something that is happening to you at the minute that you are doing. It is not you. The real you, the inner you, is strong, it's beautiful, it's independent. And you've got to start loving yourself so that you know, and being aware of yourself so that you know this. And this feeds into the next quote of, it's not the strength of the body but the strength of the spirit. That was Tolkien who wrote that. And it's, again, you could be so physically strong because we have energy fields around our body. And the physical goes to the strength, but the spiritual starts to encompass more. And then we have things like the universal energy, so that we're encompassing all our fields. We're beginning to love our true self, and our true self is becoming more dominant, it's becoming more prominent because we're focusing on the positive. We're focusing on the things that we can do and the things that are in our control, rather than the things that aren't in our control. And then we start looking at how we can improve ourselves. And when we look at depression, people often say, well, it's fate. I've always been like this. This is the way it's supposed to happen. So this quote from Samwise, folk seem to have been just landed in adventures. Usually their paths were laid that way, but I expect they had lots of chances like us of turning back, only they didn't. And if they had, we shouldn't know because they'd have been forgotten. And sometimes we feel like we're forgotten because we've got no choice, but we can bring back and we can reflect, and actually we have a choice. We can choose a different path. Fate may seem like that is what is happening, but we do have a choice. We can look back and go, okay, I made this choice based on the knowledge that I had back then. And yes, it turned out it wasn't a very effective choice. But that's all the information I had back then. And like Frodo and Sam, that's all the information they had at each time when they came to make their choices. But they didn't turn back, they continued and carried on, so that they moved forward. They learnt more about themselves and more about each other. And things changed. And then when we look at depression, we often blame other people. We often go, well, it's your fault. And this feeds into this. It is useless to meet revenge with revenge, it will heal nothing, said Frodo. We got to stop taking responsibility for ourselves instead of blaming other people. It's your fault I'm depressed. It's never going to make you help with your journey. You've got to, okay, I am depressed. What can I do about it? What can I do differently? And then you're accepting responsibility. And when you accept responsibility and accountability for your own feelings, you can become self-aware and things will change. And when we look at our self-esteem, do we praise ourselves or do we criticise ourselves? Often we will criticise ourselves, which makes us feel worse. So deeds will not be less valiant because they are unpraised, said Aragorn. Well, let's look at our own actions. What's the consequences of that to other people? Do we praise other people or do we criticise? Do we praise ourselves or do we criticise? When we start learning to praise other things, we're looking at positives. And when we look at positives, things change. And as I said, we're all on a journey. It's not the job that's never started that takes longest to finish, said Sam. We've got to take that initial step. If we don't take that initial step because we're procrastinating, because we're depressed and we don't want to be out that comfort zone, we're going to be stuck in that comfort zone. We are not going to take that action that we need to start looking at how we can change our thoughts and processes. And when we start doing that, things change. And then we've got to look at ourselves. Because even the smallest person can change the course of history. So that was Galadriel. We've got to look at ourselves a smallest person. We often feel small, unwanted. But when we start changing that perspective and going, actually, we can make a difference. Even if it's just a difference to ourselves, that has a knock-on effect to other people. So if you start going, I'm depressed, but then you start taking action towards that depression, that is going to have an influence on other people. And when we can send more love and compassion out there. So these are just some quotes that I found. I love these quotes. There's many, many more. But when we look at how we are depressed and what we've got to do, we can change the things that we've got. By looking at the quotes, we can actually go, I need to start looking at reflection. And when all was dark and all seemed lost, Gandalf says, I am Gandalf the White. I come back to you now at the turning of the tide. We can do the same. Even if we're in that dark place, we can bring ourselves back. And the slightest difference can make a biggest difference. It can make a big difference to you, it can make a big difference to other people. But what we've got to do is be aware. Self-aware. What am I getting out of this emotion? And what can I do differently? And when we start doing things differently, you will get a different result, even sometimes if it's out of your comfort zone. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed that little talk on Lord of the Rings. One of my favourite books. And it's good to have a hobby and do different things. So, enjoy yourself. Love yourself. Stand in front of the mirror and go, I am Aragorn, or whatever it is, and I love myself. Start loving yourself. Look at your own body posture. Look at your own thoughts and feelings. What are you trying to get out of those? What is your journey? What is your destination? What is your motivation for moving forward? And then you'll start moving forward, and you'll have a different result. So guys, follow me on my Facebook page, Mind Frontiers. That'd be awesome. I do have an Instagram, Glenton Mark, which I do put all my videos up on and other things as well. And please like, subscribe and share my videos on YouTube. And don't forget to hit the notification so that you get more videos. Because this message is important and we need to get it out there. So please help me get this out there. And this is great. Any other comments or feeds that you want me to do, just give me a link. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.